In the previous lesson, we saw how we can work with vector graphics in Photoshop. And in this video, we're going to concentrate on 3D effects and 3D objects and models and other operations and you can do in Photoshop. So I'm going to open the previous lesson here because we can use some of this material which we already created in the previous lesson. Now, my suggestions first are that if you don't have a really strong computer, you probably don't want to use too big image. So you can go in the canvas size here and check if it's like too heavy in terms of pixels. So you can go to image size and see if it's like too high resolution. Let's make these like 72 and let's make 1000 pixels. So everything is going to be slightly smaller so we can work more comfortably. Secondly, I will go here to the 3D in the preferences. So if I go to edit and preferences, I can go to the 3D section, and this is where I can choose how much of my VRAM I can use from my graphic card. So make sure that first this is activated. Otherwise, you need to go to performance and make sure that your graphic card has been accepted. And this is mine right here. You can also have advanced settings here. Just make sure you have OpenGL, which is good for some of the 3D effects. So let's go back here and you can see you have this possibility to dedicate more or less VRAM. Now in this case, I'm gonna dedicate the whole 8 gigabyte for this. But you can also like change a little bit the 3D overlays and the quality of, for example, the shadows if you want to make things not too heavy and so on. So that's a really important panel. And also in the window workspace, I'm using here not the standard, but the 3D workspace because it's showing you what you can use with the 3D right here. And then you have properties here, and we can expand this, and we already have a 3D panel that you can always open from here if it's not open. Window 3D, and this is good to create new 3D objects, layers, and so on. Now we can start from scratch, or we can use what we already have in the image. For example, if I take this monkey right here, now this is a shape and it can be turned into 3D. So if I select this and I go in 3D, you can see that I can work with the source, which is going to be my selected layer, or could be a work path. So it could be a path that we used previously to create vector graphics, or could be a selection. So if I just create whatever selection from here, I can then turn it into a 3D. Now in this case, we already have here a layer. So I'm just going to go to select a layer, and then you can choose if you want a flat 3D effect, if you want an actual thickness, so an extrusion, or if you want to generate like primitives like cone or cylinder or sphere and so on. Or if you want a depth map, which is kind of something really specific I'm going to show you later. And so let's go for 3D extrusion, which is kind of the most appropriate for this. So if I click create, it's going to create 3D right away. Now we can tell by the shadow, and we can see a little bit of the extrusion in there. Now, as soon as you get in a 3D world, you're gonna have different elements here. So you're gonna have an environment, you can have a scene, and then you can also use presets here for the scenes. Then you have the camera and the view. You have a light, which is now an infinite light. If you turn off the light, you can see it's not going to show clearly the 3D object right there. And then you have different materials for each part of the 3D object. So you can select, for example, the side or the extrusion or the front, and you can apply a different material. And now we also apply a texture based on the object that we had, but we can change it. So we can work with the texture, or we can just remove the texture. So just work with the color, and you can change here also this is the height map, which is causing the 3D superficial effect. So I can remove that, Well, make sure you have all the texture removed, or you can also, start from one of these materials. And these are also materials that you can um, select, you can load, you can save, you can reset, you can just create a new material to make your own custom material and change again the glow, metallic effect, roughness. So you can define the material right here as you like. Now, also you have navigation. So right now you can, I'm in the move tool, so I can move this around, and it's gonna behave like another layer. So you have also arrangements here, so you can place this at the top, or you can place this on the back. So this is how a 3D layer is identified in the layers panel with this little cube. And then you have also here the possibility to turn on and off texture and height, or you know go one by one, decide whatever you want to do in terms of layers. You can also rasterize. If you right click, you can rasterize. So once it's rasterized, you can use all the raster commands like the paint tool or the eraser, and continue with the standard raster graphics. Want to go back, Control Z, and also go back to the move tool. So you have move, but you also have orbit, which is looking around the object. You see the shadows also there. And you have also the rotation here. And then you have the movement, and then you have the movement of the camera back and forward or from side to side. And then you have the scaling. So you make it smaller or bigger. So the standard transformation we saw previously, but this time in 3D. I'm going to deactivate some layers here because I want to show you the text. So always think if you need the 3D or not, because 3D is really heavy. So sometimes you probably don't need it. Now what I want to do is delete the text and type 3D graphics. And I think I need to make this a little bigger, otherwise I won't see anything. So there you go. I don't like the font here, so I want to change it into something else. But first I'm gonna type here graphics. Okay, and then perhaps I want to change the color from this part of the text. Okay, and to change the font, we saw that we can download other fonts. You can install it. Now in my case, yeah, I like this a little bit more, or something stronger, essentially like this will be fine. And well, before you see, we have a 3D button here, but before we go to 3D, we can consider to use the other transformation or the formation here. So if I go to warp text, I can use again an arc, or I can use different deforming commands here. And I want to do kind of something not too strong, like let me see here, inflate. Yeah, something like this will be fine, just to show you that you cannot work with this. And if you don't want to go in 3D, you can work with like fake 3D effects. So let me move this right here. So if you double click on this layer, you get into the layer style, and here you have some fake effects like bevel and emboss, and you can change these the borders there, the edges. You can make it smoother, you can make it stronger, you can soften that out. You can change the way you can show the highlights or the shadows, and also where the light is coming from. And you can also use contours. You can use texture on top of that. You can create your own texture as we saw, and then you can apply it on top of that. And you can change the scale. There you go. So make it smaller, bigger. You can change the depth, can go like the other way. So these are really cool 3D effects without actually spending too much performance. And then you have strokes, inner shadows, you have inner glow. So you can see that by working with some of the blending modes here, we can get, and with the pattern or with the gradient, you can really you know, have a lot of different outcomes. So maybe, yeah, I like this one here. I don't know, but you can play a lot with this, and you can simulate lights and shadows. Then you have satin, again, kind of an extra layer, and then you have color overlay, so extra layer, and gradient overlay again. So make sure it's kind of visible here. Uh, Let me try with another gradient like blue. There you go. Then you can adjust it, you can rotate it. And it's not really visible because I think there are like too many things that are overriding. There you go. Now we can see it, and perhaps you can play with the blending modes again to find something more interesting. It's an infinite number of solutions. Pattern overlay again. So this time it's not in 3D, is the graphics, and then we have auto glow if you want to create the effect, like glowing effect around, kind of a luminosity effect or something. And then you have drop shadow also, you want to simulate the shadows. So you can play a lot already with the styles, but of course if you go in 3D you have like the actual 3D transformation. So let's change this into 3D. To do this, we can just select the text, going into the text command, and just click on the 3D button here, and it's going to turn it in 3D automatically. And also we have a lot of things to play here with. So we have the shape presets, so you can make like also some fillets here, some chamfer on the edges. And we have also the texture mapping and scale. We can change the extrusion. You can see now it's way more extruded, so I need probably to move this down a little bit. And maybe I don't have the space, so I'm gonna decrease it a little bit. And then you have let me see here, we can move on here. So the next one will be like, again, the extrusion, but then you have like twist, so you can twist this around, having really a really interesting effect here. And then you have taper, so make it smaller, larger. I think I want to decrease again the extrusion a little bit. And well, you can continue with this and experiment. And then you have here the possibility to work again with the contours. And then you have again movement, so move, rotate, and scale. We talk about the possibility to create vector graphics, more advanced vector graphics using Illustrator or using Inkscape, free alternative to Illustrator, or you have AutoCAD or LibreCAD if you want more technical drawings. And when you bring these drawings inside Photoshop, you can then use them to 3D, or you can use more like advanced 3D software like Blender, which is open source and free, or you have like 3ds Max, which is one of the most popular. And then you have Maya also from Autodesk, and then you have Cinema 4D, and also others. If you want to get more into digital sculpting and increase the level of detail of your characters or whatever objects that are organic, you can use ZBrush or also Mudbox, or also Blender. You can do character sculpting in Blender, and you will find courses about this in the channel. And also you can proceed with the 3D with lights and environment and animation. You can use Twinmotion, which is really easy to use, and it has a free version, free non-commercial version. And a lot of these, they have the trial version, so you can try them. And then you have also the free Unreal Engine, which is a powerful render engine, but also you can do animation modeling, 3D modeling, and lighting, and a lot. And you can also do interactivity using the scene. So you can do like game level design and video games, interactive application. Again, you will find all of this stuff in the channel. Now, we can also import 3D models from other software. And if you don't have it, you can use, for example, Sketchfab. And we dedicated a lot of video guides about Sketchfab, so you will find them in the channel if you're interested, but essentially you can download any 3D model here or the free 3D models, or you can use also Polyoven. Again, you will find other video guides about this. And if you go here, you will find some models. And I want to download this one to show you how you can bring it in Photoshop. So this is the model right here, the 3D model with the mesh and the polygons. And then you have the various texture down here. So what we're going to do is import the model together with the texture. So we need to choose here a resolution. We need to choose a file type. And Photoshop can read GLTF and among other formats. So we're gonna use GLTF for this, and then just click on download, and it's gonna go in your download folder. Now make sure you extract the folder and or unzip, and here you will find a 3D object and the texture. Now if you want, you can also customize the texture. You can make your own packaging, your own graphic design applied to a 3D object by changing directly the source texture if you want. You need a mapping for this. If you want to do your own 3D model with your own mapping, you need a 3D software because these are kind of advanced features. So let's get back inside. You can go also from here, click on 3D menu, and you can create a new 3D layer from file. So just navigate where you store the file. In my case, I created a 3D folder here. Select the 3D object, which is again GLTF. Now you also can import 3ds, so from 3D Studio Max or DAE, or you can import STL, which is for printing, or OBJ, which is usually from like Cinema 4D and Maya. And when you select it, just double click, define the scene size, but you can always resize this. So let's say okay, and there you go. We have those two nice spray cans, and we can like move them around. We can also again use the camera to move around the scene. We can maybe push them a little bit back there, and we can resize them. We can change also the camera field of view, so you can make it more telescopic if you go near, or you can make it more like eye fisheye deformation. And also again we can orbit a little bit so we can see a little bit of the shadows. Maybe we can like change it and put it like there. So they all already look good. And if I go here, you can also use the picker or the eyedropper. This is for the 3D material. So if I click here, it's going to show me the material that I'm using right here. I can also change the materials from here. And if I go on the properties, I can see how the material is made. So you can see it's a pretty metallic material, so it's going to be reflective. But to see reflections and transparency, you need an environment, you need a rendering. You cannot see advanced features here. Then you have a height map and opacity, so you can make it more invisible. Refraction, if you want like glass, a density, so you can play around with the parameters here of the material. And so you can import, and you can use the objects to paint on them. So if you select the 3D object right here, and then you move inside with one of these tools. So let's try it with the brush tool, for example. So you can see I can brush on this like if it was actually there. So I can also move around, orbiting and then painting like on the other side. And right now I'm using kind of a spray brush, but you can use whatever brush you want, and you can download other brush if you want, as we saw. And so you can paint on top of this texture essentially. Or you can use the eraser again. Now it's erasing also the texture, by the way. And all the other tools that you see essentially here, whatever we did with the pixels, we can do it right here because these are pixels applied to a 3D object essentially. So you can also use like the fill, and let's fill here with this material. So if I click, it's gonna fill up everything with that. Now we can also work with lights. So if I want in the 3D panel, I can add a new point light, and there you go. And also, of course, you can change it. So right now we're using infinite light and a point light, so you can turn them on and off. decide which one you want. You can see also it's going to affect the shadows, and also you can change here the color of the light. So it's going to determine another aspect when you render. The render is the final part. So you can play with the colors, you can play with there you go. You can play with materials, you can play with lights. You also have custom here, light settings, which you can try. And here you have the position of the light and other settings. Let me just run a render down here. So when you run a render, it's going to calculate the 3D object, the texture, the lights, and it's going to be faster if you have a faster graphic card. Now, if you see too much light, you can adjust the light intensity, but sometimes it's caused by the material. So maybe it's too reflective or something like that. And essentially you can fix it. Now you can also add an environment, which is gonna do IBL, which stands for image-based lighting. So it's gonna create basically a light based on an image. If you click here, you can edit the texture so you can see a preview, or you can change the type of environment. So you can replace the texture or just remove it and then place a new texture. So I'm just going to go to replace, and I already have a folder here of HDRI, which I downloaded from Polyoven. And again, you find tutorials about this in the channel. So I have a folder here called HDRI. So just change here the visibility of the files. So if I apply a studio, it's going to be different from like an exterior or a sunset or an interior. So when you change the environment, it's going to change everything essentially. And you can also just work without any light, just using the environment. So let's see how you can see now it's been lightened by the environment now. So you have also better reflections when you use an HDRI. Just to show you where you can find it here in Polyoven, you can go here HDRI and you have like exteriors, interiors, studios, and whatever. So try them and see if they can improve your render. And you can always try with different replays with another one, see how the lining is going and the reflections. So you can see this is a kind of a interior, and you can also increase the lighting a little bit and fix this effect. Now you can see it better, the reflections. So for each of these you have a lot of settings. We cannot go through all of these, but just roughly you understand that you have an environment, and then you have an object, you have a material applying on the object, you have lights, and that's it. Now I want to show you a couple of extra features here. So if I go again in the 3D menu, and I can export the 3D layer, so I can make my own file and continue in Blender or in another like 3D software. You can also get more content if you want, and then you have all these other actions you can do. Now about the 3D object that you can create, so um, we said that we can use vector graphics, but essentially you can use anything. So if you want to use an image, let me show you. If I open up or actually directly place an image here, so it's going to be, this is going to be now a flat image, and we can distort this using the perspective distortion also. But if you want to make this a little bit more 3D, let's say like this, well, we can change it into 3D. So if I go in the 3D now, I can, let's also rasterize this. Okay. And so if we right click, we don't have any like direct conversion. But if I go in 3D now, you see I have, if I select this layer, I have this panel. So I can convert the source. So it's going to be this selected layer in a 3D extrusion or postcard. So if I do like postcard, you will see that now I can turn it around like it was again in 3D, but it's not actually, it doesn't have actually a thickness. So let me move this aside. And it's looking like an image being rotated. And you can do that again also with standard transformation. If you have a PNG, so you don't have a background, like this logo here that I have in my computer, so I can also click and drag, and let's make this a little bit smaller or maybe bigger, I don't know. So if you have this, you can, let me go back in the 3D here. So you can do an extrusion with this, and it's going to create the actual extrusion you see there. So if I now adjust it with the orbit like this, it's going to look like, you know, it's not an image, but it's actually, it has the shape of the PNG. And of course, you can then work with the different materials. You see, you have also a material for the extrusion. So if I want to change that side material, I can, you know, apply another color. So for each of the side here, you have a different material, as we already told before. Now, let's go back in the layer. Also, if I create a new layer directly in here, so if I click new, and that's going to be like a new empty layer. Let me just go a bit down here and go back to 3D. You can also use mesh from presets, and you have like donut, hat, ring, soda, sphere, wine bottle. So let's make like a soda and create. And there you go. So you have a soda can there in the background, which again I can use. I can put it in the foreground. I can orbit it around. So that's another way you can create like new objects and then apply new materials. So you see this is kind of a standard material, but I can also like from here I can change it, apply another one, and that probably is better. And lastly, you can work also with texture. So let me open up here another image that I have, which I'm gonna convert into a texture. So I want to go in my photos. Well, texture should be flat, but I have here kind of a perspective. Yeah, you should flat this out using the perspective adjustments as we saw previously, but we can also turn this into 3D map. So if we go to filter and 3D, we can make this standard texture looking like a normal map, which then you can apply to a material to have a three-dimensional effect like this. There you go, and you have a preview of the material when it's going to be applied to an object. And then you have the, again, going to filter 3D, we have generate bump or height map, which is again representing the extrusion of a material. And then you can apply this. If you say, okay, you can save this, you can apply it to a 3D object in the correct texture channel. So I'm gonna save this quickly as a JPEG in a 3D folder again. Let me save this as height map. Okay, and once it's saved, you can use it in any occasion. Or let me apply it to the can. So I want to apply this to the height. So click here, and I load the texture, select the height map, and then it's gonna appear in there as an effect. You see, it's not like diffuse, which is the most superficial layer, but it's kind of a fake 3D effect on the top of that can. Let me see here. If I rotate it a little bit with the light, you can see better the effect there. You see those lines. And also with this, we can create another type of 3D object. Going here to mesh from that map, we can use, let's make this a solid extrusion. And so let's create. It's going to create a really heavy 3D object. Now the white will be the more extruded part, the black the less extruded. This is how a height map work. And this is also the effect that you get when you apply this on a 3D model. It's gonna like extrude and create a fake 3D extrusion. Well, this is an actual 3D extrusion, so this is pretty heavy. And you can use this also in other 3D software. Now, for each layer that we created, we can then go and render it out to have a better quality. So let's adjust here something more on this text. Let me see here. If we play with everything we can play, and when we're ready, click on the render here, and it should create a better effect once it's rendered. Should be better, and then you can like rasterize it, you can save it, and you can continue with this also with the other layers to have a better rendering. So this will be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested again in 3D, you probably want to move into more advanced software, or you can give it a try more here in Photoshop with the other um, tools and features that you see here, more advanced. So this will be all, and please join the channel if you want to support us, and go check the other courses and the other guides that can be interesting for you. And see you in the next lesson.